Okay, now we're going to go through some of the exercises here for section 5. For exercises on 5.1, you're asked to identify the major, minor, and the middle terms. You don't need to identify the various types, A, etc. Just identifying the major, middle, and minor terms. So for number 2, the major term is insects that should be killed. The minor is dragonflies. And the middle is insects that eat mosquitoes. For number 3, the major term is environmentally produced diseases. The minor term is psychological disorders. And the middle term is inherited afflictions. And number 5, major term is good absorbers of ultraviolet rays. The minor term is things destroyed by chlorine, and the middle term is ozone molecules. Exercise for section 2, you are to put the syllogisms into standard form using letters to represent terms and the names. So for number 3, this one gets translated into all WRM, okay, no RRW, and some RRM. So the way to do this is you have to first identify the conclusion, and have to identify the conclusion then once you identify the conclusion, then you know the subject and predicate of the conclusion, and then the predicate of the conclusion then becomes the major term, major premise, and then the subject of the conclusion becomes the minor term or the minor premise, and so therefore you then put it into correct categorical form, and then you see whether it follows the rules or not. And in this case it does not, so you have all W or M, first premise, no R or W is the second premise, and the conclusion some R or M. It violates the distribution rules, so it's invalid. Number 5, we end up, after doing what we did with number 3, some MRI, no IRP, and the conclusion some PRM, and that too is invalid. And number 9, we have no PRT, all ART, and the conclusion no ARP, and that is valid. For section 5.2, here we use Venn diagrams to test these categorical syllogisms. And so if we write out the number 3 in categorical syllogistic form, we have no IRP, first premise, all TRP, second premise, and the conclusion some T are not I. It's invalid from the Boolean perspective, and it's valid from the Aristotelian perspective, since we would be talking about television evangelists, right? So television evangelists do exist, so therefore from the Aristotelian perspective we can say things about them. Number 5, that one gets translated as no ERC, first premise, no CRD, the second premise, and no DRE, and you do the drawings and it comes out invalid. Number 9, the first premise is some ARP, second premise is all PRN, and the conclusion is some NRA, and that one is valid. And number 11, the first premise is all CRP, second premise is all CRT, and the conclusion is some TRP, and that is invalid. And number 13 and 15, I'll give you the answers here, but then on the next slide I will go through 13 and 15. So number 13 is no PRW, second premise is all DRP, and the conclusion is no DRW, and we'll see that that's valid. And number 15, the first premise is some CRR, the second premise is all CRD, and the conclusion is some DRR, which is valid. So now I'll go on and show 13 and 15 on the next slide. Basically, this is just kind of what you will have been doing through all of these exercises, but this will help with some of these more complicated ones. All right, I'm going to do numbers 13 and 15 from chapter 5. And this is section 5.2, number 13. So let me read through the column. Number 13 says, no people who profit from illegality of their activities are people who want their activities legalized. So let's use P for people who profit from the illegality of their activities. So let's see, we're doing number 13. Okay, so that's no people who profit from the illegality of their activities are people who want their activities legalized. So let's say W. Okay. All drug dealers are people who profit from the illegality of their activities. So here we'll say that all D are P, right? People who profit from illegality of their activities. Therefore, that's what the 3 dots came in for. Therefore, no drug dealers are people who want their activities legalized. No drug dealers are people who want their activities legalized. So W. So let's draw this out then. We have the subject and predicate of conclusion. So those become subject of conclusion, which is D, predicate of the conclusion, which is W, and P is the middle term. Oh, not a very good circle. Okay, so no P or W. So if we look at the circle P and W, there are no P's and W's. There's no, where P and W overlap, there's nothing there. So we can shade it in, shade it where there's nothing. No P or W, okay. All D are P. So wherever there is a D, there's a P. So where there isn't a D, there isn't anything, right? So we basically shade in all this area. And so no D or W is the conclusion, and we see there isn't a D in the W. So the Venn diagram bears this out and shows that it is a valid conclusion. Let's move on to number 15. Okay, 15. Some communication satellites are rocket-launched failures. So let's do some C for communication satellites. R for rocket-launched failures. All communication satellites are devices with antennas. All C for communication satellites are D, devices with antennas. Therefore, some devices with antennas are rocket-launched failures. Okay, so we have the subject and predicate of the conclusion again. Let me try and draw better circles this time. D, R, and C is the middle term. So let's start filling out the Venn diagram. So some C are R. So there's a C and R. It's somewhere in here. I started on the line because it could be on this side or on that side. We don't know. It's just there is a C somewhere in here. That's what the claim is. Next claim is all C are D. Okay, so wherever C and D overlap, that's all there. So there isn't anything where C and D don't overlap. So that makes this shaded or empty. And so that now puts the X in here, right? Takes it off the fence and puts it in this little because we do have some C R R, and so we do have a C that is an R in here. And all this is shading. So some D R R. Some D, or something D is R. So yes, this is also valid. So now we'll go on to section 5.2, and I'll simply illustrate again numbers 3, 5, and 9. For this section, I'm just going to do all three of the ones that aren't given in the back of the book. So I'm going to do 3, 5, and 9. And so let me do 3 up here and draw okay. So it says some MRP. So it's subject, predicate, and middle term. So some MRP. So somewhere in here, there is something. It could be on this side, it could be on that side. So let's see what else we can find. All SRM. Okay, so where there is an S and it's going to be an M. So there isn't an S that isn't an M. So the S circle that's outside the M gets empty. So what can we conclude? We really can't conclude anything from this. We can't say that this thing is S or not S. So there is no conclusion that we could. So he hits on the line. It's not forced anywhere. So for number 3, there's no conclusion. Okay. Hopefully it'll become clear when I do number 5. Okay. Subject, predicate, middle term. And so number 5 is some P R M. So we have a P that is an M. So I'll put it on the line for right now because we don't know where it might end up. So there's an X there. All M are S. So again, where M and S don't overlap, it's empty. So that puts the X in that little tiny spot, because I didn't draw this very well. So we can conclude that there is an S that is P, right? We have the X in the S circle, and it's also in the P circle. So we can say some S are P. So we can conclude that. Okay, and now let me do the last one, number 9. Okay, number 9, no PRM. So where P and M, there's the P circle, M circle, where they overlap, there's nothing there, because no PRM, so that's empty. And then some MRS, so where M and S overlap, we have an X here, some MRS. And so what can we say about S and P, right? Because that's what we're talking about, subject and predicate of the conclusion. Well, then we can say that there is an S that's not P. So we can say some S are not P. So that's how 3, 5, 9 work. Basically, the others are pretty much the same way. So hopefully this helped. The last section for the homework exercises is for 5.3. Again, looking at the rules and fallacies that we have gone over. So for number 2, it is valid. Number 3, it's valid from the Aristotelian perspective, but it commits the existential fallacy from the Boolean. Number 5, it's invalid, commits the existential fallacy because there are no transparent metals. Number 6, It's invalid. The minor term is not distributed in the premise, what's called the illicit minor fallacy. Number 8, it's invalid because we have an undistributed middle term. And number 9, it's invalid because we have an affirmative conclusion from with a negative premise. It violates that rule. And so that's it for this homework.